"Be my daddy on my birthday. He never comes," says a poor 6-year-old girl to a young workaholic CEO, unaware she was actually his real daughter. "Before we begin, tell me something about where you live. What's the weather like today?" The December wind cut through downtown Chicago like a blade. But Marcus Sterling barely noticed as he strode past the small park adjacent to his office building. At 32, he commanded Sterling Enterprises with ruthless efficiency that had made him a millionaire before 30. His Armani suit was pristine, his jaw set with determination, and his mind already racing toward the quarterly board meeting. Mr. Wait!" A tiny voice pierced through his concentration. Marcus paused, his hand reaching for the building's chrome handle. He turned to see a small girl with tangled blonde hair and a worn pink jacket. Her bright blue eyes looked up at him with desperate hope that made something twist uncomfortably in his chest. "Please," she whispered, tugging gently at his coat. "I need to ask you something really important." Marcus glanced at his Rolex. 2 minutes until his conference call with Tokyo. Every second counted in his world, where delayed decisions meant lost millions. But something about this child's earnest expression made him hesitate. "What is it?" he asked curtly, his voice softer than intended. The little girl bit her lip, small hands fidgeting with her jacket's frayed edges. "My birthday is tomorrow, and I was wondering—" She took a shaky breath. "Would you be my daddy for my birthday? Just for one day?" Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. "What did you say?" "My daddy never comes to my birthdays," she continued, barely above a whisper. "Mama used to say he was busy with important work, but now Mama's gone and Mrs. Rodriguez says my daddy doesn't want to see me. But I thought, maybe you could pretend, just for tomorrow." The child's words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Something about her blue eyes, the way she tilted her head, the stubborn set of her small jaw, it all felt hauntingly familiar. But he pushed the thought away. "I'm sorry, but I can't. Please!" The desperation in her voice made him stop. "I'll be really good. I won't ask for presents or anything. I just want someone to sing happy birthday to me." Marcus stared down at this tiny girl who had somehow managed to crack the armor around his heart. In her eyes, he saw something that reminded him of another pair of blue eyes, eyes that had once looked at him with love. "What's your name?" he found himself asking. "Emma," she said, brightening slightly. Emma Rose. The name struck him like lightning. Rose. Sarah Rose. The woman he'd walked away from 7 years ago when she'd told him she was pregnant. The woman whose calls he'd ignored, whose letters he'd returned unopened. The woman who had died in a car accident. His throat felt tight. "Emma Rose," he repeated slowly. How old are you?" "I'm going to be 7 tomorrow," she announced proudly, then caught herself. I'll be 7. Mrs. Rodriguez says I need to speak properly." 7. The timeline matched perfectly. Marcus felt a mixture of shock and recognition. If Sarah had been pregnant 7 years ago, and this child was turning 7. As Emma smiled up at him, revealing a small gap between her front teeth identical to his own childhood photos, Marcus felt his carefully constructed world begin to crumble. "Emma, where do you live?" he asked gently. "With Mrs. Rodriguez in the building over there." She pointed to a modest apartment complex across the street. "She's nice, but she's not my mama. And she says my daddy lives in a big building with lots of windows, doing important work." Marcus's blood ran cold. His building had lots of windows. His work was important. And if Sarah had hidden the truth about the timing. "Emma, what was your mama's name?" "Sarah Rose," the little girl said matter-of-factly. "She had the prettiest yellow hair just like mine, and she used to sing me to sleep every night until she got sick." The world seemed to stop spinning. Marcus felt his knees weaken as the full impact hit him. This wasn't just any child asking for a pretend father. This was his daughter, his actual daughter, standing before him. asking him to be her daddy for one day, completely unaware that he already was. 7 years of running from responsibility, 7 years of telling himself he wasn't ready for fatherhood, 7 years of ignoring the truth, and now that truth was staring up at him with his own eyes, asking for the one thing he'd never been able to give. "Emma," he whispered, his voice breaking. You don't have to decide now," she said quickly, misinterpreting his hesitation. "I'll be here tomorrow at 3 o'clock, right by this bench. If you come, I'll know you want to be my birthday daddy. If you don't." She shrugged with heartbreaking resignation. As she started to walk away, Marcus wanted to call out, to tell her the truth, to sweep her into his arms and promise he'd never leave her again. But the words stuck in his throat, held back by years of carefully constructed walls. Emma turned back once, giving him a small wave, and Marcus saw his mother's smile reflected in her innocent face. As she disappeared into the apartment building, Marcus Sterling, the man who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, stood frozen on a Chicago sidewalk, his entire world shattered by 13 words from a little girl who didn't know she'd just asked her real father to love her. Tomorrow was December 15th, his daughter's 7th birthday, and he had less than 24 hours to decide whether he was ready to finally become the father he should have been all along. Marcus Sterling stood in his corner office, 30 floors above Chicago streets, staring at the apartment building where his daughter lived. The contract for European expansion lay forgotten on his mahogany desk, numbers blurring as Emma's words echoed in his mind. "Be my daddy on my birthday." He'd built his empire on decisive action, never second-guessing choices once made. But now, faced with the most important decision of his life, he felt paralyzed by 7 years of absence. His phone buzzed. "Mr. Sterling," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board members are waiting in conference room A." "Cancel it," Marcus said quietly. "Sir, the European expansion—" "Cancel everything for today, Jennifer, and get me Robert Chen on the line." Robert Chen was the best private investigator money could buy, and Marcus had used his services once before, when guilt had finally driven him to check on Sarah Rose. The report had been brief: deceased, car accident, no next of kin listed. But Robert had missed something crucial. "Marcus, good to hear from you." Robert's voice was warm but professional. "What can I do for you?" "I need you to find out everything about Sarah Rose's daughter, Emma Rose. She's living with someone named Mrs. Rodriguez in the Riverside Apartments on Michigan Avenue." "I thought you said the Rose case was closed." Marcus closed his eyes. "I was wrong, very wrong, and Robert, I need this yesterday." While waiting for Robert's call, Marcus found himself walking to the window every few minutes, searching for a glimpse of blonde hair in the courtyard below. Each time he spotted a child, his heart raced, only to settle when he realized it wasn't Emma. His phone rang exactly 90 minutes later. "Marcus, you need to sit down." Robert's voice was grim. "Just tell me." "Emma Rose Turner, born December 15th, 2017. Mother Sarah Rose Turner. She took her maiden name back after you left. Father listed as unknown on the birth certificate." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "December 15th, 2017? "That's right. She's turning 7 tomorrow. Marcus, there's more. Sarah worked 3 jobs to support Emma. She was driving home from her night shift at the diner when she had the accident. The car's brakes failed. She'd been putting off repairs because she couldn't afford them." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Sarah had been struggling, working herself to death, while he'd been closing deals and accumulating wealth. She'd needed him, and he'd been too proud and scared to even take her calls. What happened to Emma after Sarah died? She was placed with Maria Rodriguez, a family friend. Mrs. Rodriguez is 68, retired, living on Social Security. She's been trying to contact Emma's father for over a year, but with no name on the birth certificate. "She's been trying to find me?" Marcus. She's been posting on social media, putting up flyers, even hired a lawyer with her savings. She knows Emma needs her father, but she had no way to identify you. Marcus sank into his chair, the full weight of his failures crushing down on him. His daughter had been searching for him while he'd been hiding behind his empire, convincing himself he was better off without the complications of fatherhood. "There's one more thing," Robert continued. "Mrs. Rodriguez has been diagnosed with early-stage dementia. She's fighting it. But the doctors say she has maybe 2 years before she'll need full-time care. Emma doesn't know yet." The phone slipped from Marcus's numb fingers. His daughter wasn't just asking for a birthday daddy. She was asking for the only father she'd ever have a chance to know, and time was running out. That evening, Marcus stood outside the Riverside apartments, his heart pounding as he climbed worn stairs to apartment 3B. The hallway smelled of cooking spices and old carpet, a far cry from the sterile luxury of his penthouse. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. Through the thin door, he could hear Emma's voice. "Mrs. Rodriguez, do you think the man will come tomorrow? The one in the fancy suit?" "Mija, I don't know. Sometimes adults make promises they can't keep." "But he looked nice, and he had the same eyes as me. Did you see? Blue like the sky after rain, just like Mama used to say about mine." Marcus's breath caught. Even as a child, Emma had inherited his mother's poetic way of describing things. She was so much more than he'd ever imagined. "What if he doesn't come?" Emma's voice was smaller now, vulnerable. "Then we'll have a wonderful birthday, just the two of us like we planned. But Emma, remember what I told you about expectations? I know. Don't expect too much from grown-ups because they're busy with important things." Emma's voice carried the weight of someone far too young to have learned such a hard lesson. "But maybe this time will be different?" Marcus pressed his forehead against the door, tears stinging his eyes. His daughter was living in hope for scraps of attention from a father who'd been too selfish to claim her. Tomorrow, she'd be standing by that bench, waiting for him to prove that she mattered more than his important work. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Jennifer. "Clear my schedule for the next month. Personal emergency." Then he walked back to his car, knowing that tomorrow at 3 o'clock he wouldn't just be meeting Emma in the park. He'd be meeting his future, and finally choosing to be the father his daughter had been waiting for her entire life. As he drove away, Marcus caught sight of Emma's silhouette in the window, backlit by the warm glow of the apartment. She was holding something close to her chest, a small, worn teddy bear that looked like it had been loved beyond measure. Tomorrow, he would make sure she never had to hold on to hope alone again. Marcus Sterling had never been nervous about a meeting in his life. He'd faced hostile takeovers, negotiated billion-dollar contracts, and stared down boardrooms full of skeptical investors without breaking a sweat. But as he stood in front of his bathroom mirror at 6 a.m. on December 15th, his hands shook so badly he could barely knot his tie. Today, he was meeting his daughter for the second time in her life, and the first time as her father. Even if she didn't know it yet, he'd spent the entire night planning, not a business strategy or financial forecast, but something far more complex: how to be a parent. His laptop was covered with printouts about 7-year-old development, birthday party ideas, and child psychology articles. He'd even called his own mother at midnight, desperate for advice. "Marcus," his mother's voice had been groggy but immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "Mom, I have a daughter." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then quietly, "Oh, sweetheart, the girl you told me about 7 years ago." Marcus had broken down then, telling his mother everything: his cowardice, his abandonment of Sarah, his discovery of Emma. His mother had listened without judgment, occasionally making soft sounds of comfort that reminded him of his own childhood. "What do I do, Mom?" How do I even begin to make this right? You start by showing up, she'd said simply, not as the CEO or the businessman, but as Emma's father. Children forgive more easily than adults, Marcus, but they also remember everything. Make sure what she remembers about today is that you chose her. Now, staring at his reflection, Marcus made a decision that would have shocked his business associates. He removed his expensive watch, loosened his tie, and traded his Italian leather shoes for sneakers he'd bought that morning. He wanted to look like a father, not a corporate executive. At 2:30 p.m., Marcus positioned himself across the street from the park, watching through the window of a small coffee shop. Emma wasn't there yet, but he could see Mrs. Rodriguez sitting on a bench nearby, her silver hair catching the afternoon sun. She looked tired, older than her 68 years, but her eyes were kind as she watched other children play. At exactly 2:45, Emma appeared. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. She was wearing a yellow dress that had been carefully mended in several places, white tights that were slightly too big, and black patent leather shoes polished until they gleamed. Her blonde hair was braided with small yellow ribbons, and she clutched the same worn teddy bear he'd seen in the window. She was beautiful. She was perfect. And she was his. Emma walked slowly to the bench where she'd asked him to meet her, her small head turning left and right as she searched for a man in a fancy suit. When she didn't see him immediately, her shoulders sagged slightly, but she sat down with the patient resignation of a child who'd learned to wait. Marcus checked his watch. 2:58. He took a deep breath, whispered a prayer to whatever gods watched over absent fathers, and stepped out of the coffee shop. Emma saw him the moment he entered the park. Her face lit up with a joy so pure and bright that Marcus felt his heart crack open in his chest. She jumped up from the bench, still clutching her teddy bear, and ran toward him. "You came!" she shouted, her voice carrying across the park. "You really came!" Marcus knelt down just as Emma reached him, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. She had his eyes, his stubborn chin, even the same small cowlick that made her hair stick up slightly on the left side. "Happy birthday, Emma," he said softly. Emma's smile could have powered the entire city. "This is Buttons," she said, holding up her teddy bear. "He's my best friend. Mama gave him to me when I was little." Marcus looked at the bear, worn fur, missing button eyes that had been replaced with mismatched ones, and a small hole in his side that had been carefully sewn shut. This bear had been loved through countless nights, had absorbed tears and whispered secrets, had been Emma's constant companion through the loss of her mother. "He's very handsome," Marcus said seriously, extending his hand to shake one of the bear's paws. "It's nice to meet you, Buttons," Emma giggled, a sound like silver bells. "He likes you. He doesn't like everybody, but he likes you." "I'm honored," Marcus replied, and meant it completely. "So," Emma said, suddenly shy again, "what should we do? I don't know what birthday daddies are supposed to do." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Well, what do you want to do? It's your birthday." Emma bit her lip, thinking hard. Could we go to the swings? And maybe you could push me really high like I see other daddies do." "I would love that," Marcus said, offering her his hand. Emma slipped her small fingers into his, and Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him. This wasn't just about making up for lost time or fulfilling a promise to a lonely child. This was about belonging to someone, about being needed in a way that had nothing to do with profit margins or quarterly reports. As they walked toward the playground, Emma chatted about school, about Mrs. Rodriguez, about the stray cat that lived in the alley behind their building. Marcus listened to every word, memorizing the sound of her voice, the way she gestured with her free hand, the dozen small expressions that flitted across her face. When they reached the swings, Emma carefully placed Buttons on the bench where he could watch. then ran to the swing set. Marcus positioned himself behind her, his hands hovering uncertainly over the swing's chains. "Are you ready?" he asked. Emma nodded eagerly, and Marcus gave her a gentle push. She squealed with delight, her legs pumping as she tried to go higher. "More! More!" she called out, and Marcus obliged, pushing her higher until she was soaring through the air, her laughter echoing across the park. "Look at me!" Emma shouted. "I'm flying!" "I'm really flying." Marcus watched his daughter soar against the December sky, her yellow dress billowing around her like wings, her face radiant with pure joy. In that moment, he understood what he'd been missing all these years. It wasn't just about being a father, it was about being part of something bigger than himself, about loving someone more than his own life. "Hiya, Daddy!" Emma called out, and then stopped suddenly, her cheeks flushing red. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you." "It's okay," Marcus said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "You can call me whatever feels right." Emma twisted around to look at him, her blue eyes serious. "Really? You wouldn't mind?" "I wouldn't mind at all," Marcus whispered, and knew that he'd just made the most important promise of his life. As the swing slowed to a gentle sway, Emma dragged her feet in the dirt to stop completely. She turned to face Marcus, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus knelt down to her level, his heart pounding. "Of course, sweetheart. Do you think my real daddy ever thinks about me?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared into his daughter's eyes, his own eyes, and saw the deep well of longing that lived there. She was asking him about himself, not knowing that the answer sat right in front of her. "I think," Marcus said carefully, his voice hoarse, "that any father would be lucky to have a daughter like you. And I think that if your daddy isn't here, it's because he's made a terrible mistake, not because there's anything wrong with you." Emma nodded solemnly, processing this. "Mrs. Rodriguez says maybe he doesn't know about me. She says sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and don't know how to fix them." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "Mrs. Rodriguez sounds very wise." "She is. She takes care of me, but she's not my mama. And sometimes at night when she thinks I'm sleeping, I hear her crying. She says she's not getting any younger, and she worries about what will happen to me." The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a mantle. Mrs. Rodriguez was fighting dementia, trying to care for a child who wasn't hers, all while knowing that time was running out. Emma needed stability, needed a permanent home, needed her father. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "what would you say if I told you that your daddy was closer than you think?" Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Before Marcus could answer, a commotion erupted near the park entrance. A small crowd had gathered around a woman who was clearly distressed, calling out Emma's name. "Emma! Emma Rose!" Emma jumped up from the swing. "That's Mrs. Rodriguez. She sounds scared." They rushed toward the crowd. Emma's small hand clutched tightly in Marcus's. Mrs. Rodriguez stood in the center of the group, her gray hair disheveled, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Emma!" A day she cried when she saw them approaching. "Gracias a Dios. I couldn't find you, and I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember where you said you were going." Emma ran to the elderly woman, wrapping her arms around her waist. "I'm here, Mrs. Rodriguez. I'm safe. This is my birthday daddy. Remember, I told you about him." Mrs. Rodriguez's confused gaze fell on Marcus, and he saw the moment when recognition flickered in her eyes. She studied his face intently, taking in his features, comparing them to the child beside her. "You," she whispered. "You have her eyes." Marcus felt his heart stop. Did she know? Could she see the resemblance that Emma was too young to recognize? "Mrs. Rodriguez," Marcus said gently, "I think we need to talk." She nodded slowly, her weathered hands still shaking. Yes, I think we do." They found a quiet bench away from the crowd, Emma sitting between them, still clutching buttons. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes had cleared somewhat, but Marcus could see the fear lurking beneath the surface, the fear of losing herself, of failing the child she'd promised to protect. "I've been looking for you," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly, her accent thick with emotion. "For over a year I've been looking for Emma's father. Sarah, she never told me your name, but she described you. Tall, dark hair, eyes like winter sky. She said you were a good man, but young and scared." Emma looked between them, confusion clear on her face. "Mrs. Rodriguez, what are you talking about?" "Mija," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently, "this man, I think he might be more than just a birthday daddy." Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was it, the moment when everything would change. He could tell Emma the truth, claim his daughter, and step into the role he should have filled years ago. Or he could continue living the lie. "Emma," Marcus said, his voice barely steady, "what if I told you that your mama and I knew each other a long time ago, before you were born?" Emma's eyes grew wide. "Really? You knew my mama?" "I did. She was very special to me. And when she found out she was going to have a baby, I was scared. I was young and stupid, and I thought I wasn't ready to be a father." Emma's grip on buttons tightened. "What happened?" "I made the worst mistake of my life," Marcus continued, tears flowing freely now. "I left. I was too proud to admit I was scared, too selfish to think about what your mama needed. And I've regretted it every single day since." Mrs. Rodriguez reached over and took Marcus's hand. "You're him," she whispered. "You're Emma's father." Emma looked back and forth between them, her young mind struggling to process this revelation. You're my real daddy." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "But you said you didn't know about me," Emma said, her voice small and confused. "I thought I didn't," Marcus admitted. "I was told that your mama's baby had, that there was no baby. I was lied to, Emma, and I was too much of a coward to try to find out the truth." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her small fingers tracing patterns on buttons' worn fur. When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. "So you didn't leave because you didn't want me?" "Oh, sweetheart," Marcus said, dropping to his knees in front of her. "I left because I was scared and stupid and young, but I never ever stopped wanting you. I just didn't know you existed." Emma studied his face for a long moment, then looked at Mrs. Rodriguez. "Is it true? Is he really my daddy?" Mrs. Rodriguez smiled through her tears. "Mija, look at his eyes, look at his smile. Look at the way he looks at you, like you're the most precious thing in the world. Yes, I think he's your daddy." Emma turned back to Marcus, her expression serious. "If you're my real daddy, does that mean you won't leave again?" Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. Emma rose sterling. "If you'll have me, I promise you that I will never ever leave you again. I will spend the rest of my life making up for the years I missed, and I will love you more than life itself." Emma was quiet for another moment, then threw herself into his arms. "Happy birthday to me," she whispered against his chest. "I got my daddy back." As Marcus held his daughter for the first time, really held her, he realized that Emma hadn't just asked a stranger to be her birthday daddy. She'd asked her real father to come home. And finally, after 7 years of running, he had. That evening, Marcus found himself in Mrs. Rodriguez's small apartment, surrounded by the life his daughter had built without him. The walls were covered with Emma's artwork, crayon drawings of houses with stick figures, handprint turkeys from Thanksgiving, and a prominent display of school certificates and gold star stickers. Emma had insisted on showing him everything. From her small bedroom, with its carefully arranged collection of second-hand toys, to the kitchen where she helped Mrs. Rodriguez make breakfast every morning. Each detail was a reminder of the ordinary moments he'd missed. "This is where Mama used to read to me," Emma said, pointing to a worn armchair by the window. "Mrs. Rodriguez reads to me now, but sometimes she forgets where we stopped." Mrs. Rodriguez was in the kitchen, preparing coffee with hands that trembled slightly. Marcus could see her struggling to maintain her composure, the weight of her diagnosis heavy on her shoulders. "Emma, sweetheart," Marcus said gently, "could you show Buttons your room again?" "I think he'd like to see where you sleep." Emma nodded eagerly, disappearing down the hallway with her teddy bear. Marcus waited until he heard her door close, then joined Mrs. Rodriguez in the kitchen. "How bad is it?" he asked quietly. Mrs. Rodriguez's hands stilled on the coffee pot. "Some days are better than others. Today was. Today was not a good day. The doctor says I have maybe 2 years before." She gestured vaguely at her head. "Before I won't be able to take care of myself, let alone a child." Marcus felt the full weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "What can I do? How can I help?" "Take her home," Mrs. Rodriguez said simply. "She needs her father, and I need to know she'll be safe before I can't protect her anymore." "But I don't know how to be a father," Marcus admitted. "I've spent 7 years building a business empire, and I don't know the first thing about raising a child." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled sadly. "You think I knew how to be a mother when Sarah died? I was a retired seamstress who had never even babysit a child. But love, it teaches you. Emma, she will teach you how to be her father, just like she taught me how to be her guardian. What if I mess it up? What if I'm as bad at being a father as I was at being a partner to Sarah? Then you learn from your mistakes, like any parent." "But Marcus, it is Marcus, yes? You cannot mess this up worse than abandoning her again would." The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. Emma had already lost her mother, had already lived without her father for 7 years. She deserved stability, deserved to know that the people who loved her wouldn't disappear. "There's something else," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "Emma, she doesn't know about my condition. She thinks I'm just getting a little forgetful. But she's smart, that one. She notices things. She's been asking questions about where she'll live when I get too old to take care of her." "What do you tell her?" "That God will provide. That good things happen to good people. But Marcus, I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll have an episode when she's at school, or that I'll forget to pick her up, or that I'll wander off and leave her alone." Marcus reached across the small table and took her hands. "That's not going to happen. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed his hands. "You mean that?" "I mean that. Emma is my daughter, and I'm going to take care of her. Both of you, if you'll let me." Tears filled the older woman's eyes. "Sarah, she would be so happy. She never stopped believing that you would come back, even when she was sick, even when she was dying. She used to say that Emma's daddy would find her someday." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "She said that. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would keep looking for you. She said Emma needed to know her father, that she had a right to know where she came from." "I failed her," Marcus whispered. "I failed them both." "No," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "You failed them then, but you're here now. That's what matters." Emma's voice drifted from the hallway. "Daddy, are you still here?" The word hit Marcus like a lightning bolt. Daddy, not birthday daddy or pretend daddy, but just daddy. She'd already claimed him, already made him part of her world, with the simple trust that only children possess. "I'm here, sweetheart," he called back. "I'm not going anywhere." Emma appeared in the doorway, Buttons tucked under her arm. "Good," she said matter-of-factly. "Because I was thinking we should have cake now. Mrs. Rodriguez made me a birthday cake. And it's chocolate with rainbow sprinkles." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, steadying herself against the counter. "Sí, mija, let's have cake." As they gathered around the small dining table, Marcus watched Emma blow out 7 candles on a homemade cake that had been decorated with more love than skill. She closed her eyes tight. her lips moving silently as she made her wish. "What did you wish for?" Marcus asked. Emma grinned, revealing the gap in her front teeth. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true. But I think it might come true anyway." As they ate cake, and Emma chatted about her school, her friends, and her favorite cartoons, Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before, a sense of completeness. This was what he'd been missing all these years, not just success or wealth or recognition, but belonging. When Emma started to yawn, Mrs. Rodriguez declared it bedtime. Emma hugged Marcus goodnight, a long, tight hug that felt like coming home. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked, her voice sleepy. "I'll be here," Marcus promised. "And the day after that?" "And the day after that." Emma smiled. "Good, because I have a lot of things to show you, and 7 years is a lot of catching up to do." As Mrs. Rodriguez tucked Emma into bed, Marcus stood in the small living room, looking at the photographs on the mantel. Sarah and Emma at various ages, Mrs. Rodriguez and Emma at school events, Emma by herself in dozens of candid shots. He'd missed all of it. First steps, first words, first days of school, lost teeth, scraped knees, bedtime stories. 7 years of moments that could never be reclaimed. But as Mrs. Rodriguez returned from Emma's room, her face soft with love for the child she'd raised, Marcus realized something important. He hadn't just gained a daughter today, he'd gained a family. Mrs. Rodriguez had been Emma's mother in every way that mattered. "She's asleep," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered. "She wanted me to tell you that this was the best birthday ever because she got her real daddy and he promised to stay." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes again. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I want you to know that you'll always be part of Emma's life. You saved her when I couldn't, and I'll never forget that." The elderly woman smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "She saved me too, you know. After my husband died, I thought my life was over. Then Sarah brought me this little girl who needed love, and suddenly I had purpose again." As Marcus prepared to leave, promising to return first thing in the morning, he realized that Emma's birthday wish had already come true. She'd wished for a family, and now she had one. Imperfect, complicated, but bound together by love and second chances. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, he would start learning how to be the father Emma deserved. The next morning arrived grey and cold, with snow beginning to dust the Chicago streets. Marcus stood outside the Riverside Apartments at exactly 7 a.m., holding 2 cups of coffee and a bag of fresh donuts from the bakery down the street. He'd barely slept, his mind racing with plans and possibilities, but for the first time in years, his insomnia felt productive rather than anxious. Emma answered the door in pajamas covered with cartoon cats, her blonde hair sticking up in every direction. Her face lit up when she saw him, as if she'd been afraid he might disappear overnight like so many other adults in her short life. "Daddy, you came back!" "I told you I would," Marcus said, kneeling to accept her enthusiastic hug. "I brought breakfast." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared behind Emma, looking more rested than she had the day before. "You didn't have to do that, Marcus." "I wanted to. We have a lot to talk about, and I thought we could do it over donuts and coffee." Over breakfast at the small kitchen table, Marcus laid out his carefully constructed plan. He'd spent the night making phone calls, pulling strings, using every connection he'd built over the years. By noon, a social worker would arrive to begin the process of transitioning Emma into his custody. His lawyers were already drawing up papers to ensure Mrs. Rodriguez would always have a place in Emma's life and in his penthouse, if she wanted it. "I don't understand all the legal stuff," Emma said, syrup from her chocolate donut sticky on her fingers. "But does this mean I get to live with you?" "If you want to," Marcus said carefully, not wanting to pressure her but hoping desperately that she'd say yes. It means you'd have your own room in my apartment. And you'd go to a new school and everything would be different. Emma's face fell slightly, and Marcus felt his heart clench. Would I still see Mrs. Rodriguez? Every day, if you want to. Mrs. Rodriguez would have her own room too, right next to yours. Emma's eyes widened with wonder and hope. Really? We'd all live together. Marcus looked at Mrs. Rodriguez, who nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. If that's what you want, mija, I think it would be very nice. Like a real family. Like a real family, Marcus confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. The social worker arrived promptly at noon, a kind woman named Janet Morrison, who'd been personally recommended by Marcus's lawyer. She spent 2 hours interviewing all three of them, taking detailed notes about Emma's routine, her needs, her relationship with Mrs. Rodriguez, and Marcus's plans for the future. This is highly unusual, Janet admitted as she prepared to leave. Most custody transitions take months of paperwork and home studies, but given the circumstances, Emma's biological connection to you, Mrs. Rodriguez's willing transfer of guardianship, and your considerable resources, I think we can expedite things. Emma clearly wants to be with you, and that's the most important factor in any custody decision. After Janet left, Emma became unusually quiet. She sat on the couch with Buttons, staring out the window at the falling snow, her small brow furrowed with worry. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, sitting beside her and gently stroking her hair. "I'm scared," Emma admitted in a small voice that broke his heart. "Scared of what? What if you change your mind? What if you decide being a daddy is too hard and you don't want me anymore?" Marcus felt his heart shatter. She was 7 years old, and she'd already learned that adults could disappear from her life without warning. Her mother had died, her father had been absent, and now she was being asked to trust again. "Emma, look at me," Marcus said gently, taking her small hands in his. She turned to face him, her blue eyes serious and searching, so much older than they should have been. "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to remember it forever. Being your daddy isn't work. It's the greatest gift I've ever received. There is nothing more important to me than you. Not my company, not my money, not anything. Do you understand?" Emma nodded slowly, but he could see the lingering doubt in her eyes. "I know it's hard to trust me," Marcus continued. "I know other people have let you down before. But I promise you, on everything I hold dear, that I will never, ever leave you again. You're stuck with me forever, whether you like it or not." Emma's lips twitched slightly at that last part. "Forever and ever? Forever and ever. Even when you're grown up and don't want your old dad hanging around anymore." "I'll always want you hanging around," Emma said seriously, then threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Daddy. I'm ready to come home." Marcus held his daughter close, feeling her small heart beating against his chest, and finally understood that home wasn't a place. It was wherever Emma was, and for the first time in 7 years, he was exactly where he belonged. 3 weeks later, Marcus Sterling's penthouse apartment had been transformed from a sterile monument to success into something resembling a home. Emma's colorful drawings decorated the refrigerator, children's books were scattered across the leather sofa, and the sound of laughter echoed through rooms that had known only silence for years. But this morning was different. Marcus sat at his kitchen island, staring at a letter that threatened to shatter their fragile happiness. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" Emma asked, padding into the kitchen in her fuzzy slippers, Buttons clutched under her arm. Mrs. Rodriguez followed close behind, moving more slowly than usual. Marcus quickly folded the letter and forced a smile. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just thinking about work stuff." Emma climbed onto the stool beside him, her blue eyes studying his face. "Mrs. Rodriguez says when grown-ups say work stuff, it usually means something important is bothering them. The letter was from Child Protective Services, responding to an anonymous complaint filed the day after the custody transfer was finalized. Someone had reported that Marcus Sterling, a workaholic billionaire with no parenting experience, was an unfit guardian for a traumatized child. "What's that paper?" Emma asked, pointing to the letter he'd tried to hide. Marcus hesitated. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that someone wants to take her away from the only real family she's ever known? "It's from some people who want to make sure you're safe and happy," Marcus said carefully. "But I am safe and happy," Emma said, confused. "I'm with you and Mrs. Rodriguez. Why would they worry about that?" Marcus had spent half the night on the phone with his lawyers. Someone with influence had made the complaint, someone who knew exactly which buttons to push to trigger an investigation. They wanted to conduct a home visit and full evaluation within the week. "Emma," Marcus said softly, "some people are coming to visit us next week. They want to ask you some questions and look around our home." "What kind of people?" Emma asked, her voice suddenly small. "People whose job it is to protect children. They want to make sure that you're happy living here with me and Mrs. Rodriguez." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this. What if they don't think I should live here? The question hung in the air like a sword. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he saw the fear creeping into his daughter's eyes, the same fear he'd seen the day she'd asked him to be her birthday daddy. "That's not going to happen," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "This is your home, Emma. You belong here with me." Mrs. Rodriguez sat down heavily, her face pale. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Yesterday, when I took Emma to the park, there was a woman watching Emma taking pictures. When I approached her, she said she was from a magazine doing a story about single fathers." Marcus felt ice form in his veins. Someone powerful was trying to tear their family apart, and he had less than a week to figure out who and why. Emma looked back and forth between them. "Are the bad people trying to take me away?" "No one is taking you anywhere," Marcus said fiercely, pulling Emma into his arms. "I don't care who they are or what they want. You're my daughter, and I will fight for you with everything I have." Emma pulled back to look at him. "Daddy, if they try to take me away, will you come find me? Like you found me at the park?" "Emma," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking, "I will always find you, no matter what happens. No matter where you are, I will never stop looking for you. Do you believe me?" Emma nodded solemnly, then pressed her face against his chest. "I believe you, Daddy, and I'm not scared anymore because you're here." But Marcus was scared enough for both of them. Someone was coming for his daughter, and he had no idea how to protect her from an enemy who hid in shadows and wielded bureaucracy like a weapon. The letter crinkled in his hand as he held Emma tighter, making a silent vow that whatever happened next, he would not let anyone tear apart the family they'd fought so hard to build. Marcus spent the weekend turning his penthouse into the perfect family home. He hired child psychologists to coach him, bought educational toys, and even had Emma's artwork professionally framed. But on Monday morning, his world came crashing down with a single phone call. "Mr. Sterling!" The voice was crisp, professional. "This is Victoria Harrington from Child Protective Services. We need to move up our home visit to this afternoon." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "That's not possible. We agreed on Friday. New evidence has come to light. We'll be there at 2 p.m. sharp." The line went dead, leaving Marcus staring at his phone. Someone had accelerated the timeline, which meant they were planning something he couldn't prepare for. "Daddy," Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her school uniform. "Mrs. Rodriguez picked me up early. She said there were important people coming." Marcus knelt down to her level. "Remember what we talked about, sweetheart. Just be yourself and tell them how you feel about living here." At exactly 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Marcus opened it to find Victoria Harrington. a severe woman in her 50s, accompanied by two other officials and, to his shock, a familiar face. "Richard Blackwood," Marcus said, his voice tight with recognition. His former business partner smiled coldly. "Hello, Marcus. I believe you know why I'm here." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Richard had lost millions when Marcus outmaneuvered him in their last deal. This wasn't about Emma's welfare. It was revenge. They spent an hour interrogating Marcus, scrutinizing every corner of his home, questioning his work schedule and parenting experience. Marcus answered everything honestly, but he could see they'd already made up their minds. Then they called Emma in. "Hello, Emma," Victoria said with fake sweetness. "We just want to ask you a few questions about living here." Emma sat beside Marcus, clutching buttons tightly. "Okay. Do you miss your old home, the one with Mrs. Rodriguez?" "This is my home now," Emma said simply. "Mrs. Rodriguez lives here too. But wouldn't you be happier with a real family? A mother and father who've been married for years?" Emma looked confused. "But I do have a real family. I have my daddy and Mrs. Rodriguez and Buttons." "Your father is very busy with work, isn't he? Don't you feel lonely?" "No," Emma said firmly. "My daddy reads to me every night and helps me with homework. He makes me pancakes shaped like animals, and he always keeps his promises." Victoria exchanged glances with Richard, clearly frustrated that Emma wasn't giving them the answers they wanted. "What if we told you there was a nice family who wanted to adopt you?" Emma's grip on Buttons tightened. "I don't want another family. I want my daddy." "But sweetheart—" "No!" Emma's voice rose. "My daddy found me when I was sad and lonely, and he promised he'd never leave me again." She threw herself into Marcus's arms, sobbing. "Daddy, and don't let them take me away." Marcus held his daughter close, meeting Victoria's eyes with steel in his own. "I think this interview is over." Richard leaned forward with a triumphant smile. "Actually, Victoria, I think we have everything we need." "Mr. Blackwood," came a new voice from the doorway, "I don't believe you were invited to speak." Everyone turned to see Judge Morrison, flanked by two lawyers. "My granddaughter Janet handled the initial custody evaluation," the judge said calmly. "When she heard about this accelerated review, she became concerned. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that Mr. Blackwood has been funding a custody challenge against his former business partner." Richard's face went white. "That's not—" "Save it," Judge Morrison said coldly. "Ms. Harrington, unless you have actual evidence of neglect or abuse, this investigation is terminated." As the officials filed out, Richard shot Marcus one last look. "This isn't over, Sterling." "Yes, it is," Marcus said quietly. After they left, Emma looked up at Marcus. "Are they really gone?" "They're really gone, sweetheart." Emma smiled through her tears. "I told them the truth, Daddy. You are my real family." 2 months after the custody battle ended, Marcus thought they'd finally found peace. Emma was thriving in her new school. Mrs. Rodriguez's condition had stabilized with new medication, and their unconventional family had settled into a comfortable routine. But on a crisp February morning, everything changed again. "Daddy, there's a lady at the door," Emma called from the living room where she'd been playing with her dolls. Marcus looked through the peephole and froze. Standing in the hallway was a woman in her late 20s with familiar blonde hair and blue eyes, features that looked hauntingly similar to Sarah's. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, opening the door cautiously. "My name is Jessica Rose," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "Sarah was my sister." Marcus felt the world tilt. Sarah had never mentioned having a sister. "I know this is a shock," Jessica continued, seeing his expression. "Sarah and I were estranged for years. Our parents died when we were young, and we were separated in the foster system. I've been searching for her for the past decade." Emma appeared beside Marcus, curious about their visitor. Jessica's breath caught when she saw the little girl. "Oh my God!" Jessica whispered, tears filling her eyes. She looks just like Sarah did at that age. Who are you? Emma asked politely, clutching buttons to her chest. I'm your Aunt Jessica, sweetheart. Your mama was my little sister. Emma's eyes widened with wonder. I have an aunt? Mama never told me about you. She probably didn't know I was looking for her, Jessica said sadly. We lost touch when we were children. Marcus felt his protective instincts kicking in. How do I know you're telling the truth? Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed two young girls, one clearly Sarah, standing together in front of a Christmas tree. On the back, in childish handwriting, it said, Sarah and Jessie, Christmas 1995. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago, Jessica explained. When I found out about Sarah's death and learned about Emma, I had to come. I had to meet my niece. Emma studied the photograph intently. That's really my mama? It really is. We used to make snow angels together and bake cookies with our foster mom, Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson, Emma exclaimed. Mama used to tell me stories about making cookies with Mrs. Patterson. She said she learned her secret chocolate chip recipe from her. Marcus watched as Emma's face lit up with excitement. She'd always been hungry for stories about her mother, and here was someone who could fill in pieces of Sarah's past that he'd never known. Would you like to come in? Marcus found himself asking, despite his reservations. Over the next hour, Jessica shared stories about Sarah's childhood, how she used to sing lullabies to her when they were scared at night, how she'd protect Jessica from bullies at school, how she'd dreamed of becoming a teacher and having a family of her own. She always said she wanted to name her daughter Emma, Jessica said. Smiling at the little girl, who sat transfixed by these tales, she said it meant whole or universal, and she wanted her child to feel complete and loved. Emma beamed. My mama chose the perfect name for me then, because I do feel complete now that I have my daddy. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself warming to Jessica. She was gentle with Emma, respectful of the boundaries he set, and genuinely seemed to care about her niece's well-being. I don't want to disrupt what you've built here, Jessica said as she prepared to leave. I can see how much Emma loves you and how much you love her. I hoped maybe I could be part of her life somehow. I'm the only family connection she has to Sarah. Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Daddy, can Aunt Jessica come to dinner sometime? I want to hear more stories about Mama. Marcus looked down at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Jessica's anxious expression. His first instinct was to protect Emma from any more upheaval, but he could see how much these stories meant to her. Maybe we could start with lunch next weekend, Marcus said carefully. See how it goes. Jessica's face lit up with gratitude. Thank you. That would mean everything to me. As Jessica left, Emma turned to Marcus with shining eyes. Daddy, isn't it amazing? I thought all of Mama's family was gone, but now I have an aunt who loved her too. Marcus nodded, pulling Emma into a hug. It is pretty amazing, sweetheart. But as he held his daughter, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their carefully constructed world was about to become more complicated. He'd just found his footing as a father, and now there was another person who had a claim on Emma's heart. Still, seeing the joy on Emma's face as she'd listened to stories about her mother, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. Emma deserved to know where she came from, even if it meant sharing her with someone else. Their family was growing again. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. 6 months after Jessica entered their lives, Marcus discovered a truth that shattered everything he thought he knew. It started with a phone call from Robert Chen, his private investigator. Marcus, I need to see you immediately. Robert's voice was urgent. It's about Jessica Rose. They met at a quiet coffee shop downtown, away from Emma and Mrs. Rodriguez. Robert spread documents across the table with grim efficiency. Jessica Rose doesn't exist, Robert said bluntly. At least, not the woman who's been coming to your home. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What do you mean? Her real name is Amanda Mitchell. She's Sarah's cousin, not her sister. And Marcus, she's been working with Richard Blackwood. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. That's impossible. Emma loves her. She knows things about Sarah that only family would know. Because she is family, just not the kind she claimed to be. Amanda was jealous of Sarah their whole lives. When Sarah got pregnant with your baby, Amanda told everyone it was a lie to trap you into marriage. Robert pulled out surveillance photos showing Jessica, Amanda, meeting with Richard Blackwood in expensive restaurants, their heads bent together in obvious conspiracy. She's been reporting back to Blackwood about Emma's routines, your parenting style, everything. They're building a new case, claiming that you're being manipulated by a child who's been coached to love you. Marcus felt sick. How long have you known? I started investigating when something felt off about her story. The timeline didn't match, and some of her childhood memories were too detailed for someone who'd been separated from Sarah so young. What do they want? Blackwood wants revenge, but Amanda, she wants Emma. She's been telling Blackwood that she should have custody as the only blood relative who truly understands Sarah's wishes. Marcus thought of Emma's excitement every time Aunt Jessica visited, how she'd beam when Amanda shared memories of her mother, how she'd started asking when Jessica might move in with them permanently. I have to tell Emma, Marcus said, his heart breaking. Marcus, wait, there's more. Robert pulled out one final document. Amanda has been secretly recording conversations with Emma, trying to get her to say she misses her old life, or that she feels overwhelmed by your wealth. She's been planting seeds, making Emma question whether she truly belongs with you. That evening, Marcus sat Emma down in her room, surrounded by all the comfort items that had made her feel safe. Buttons, her artwork, photos of their family. Emma, sweetheart, I need to tell you something about Jessica, and it's going to be hard to hear. Emma's face immediately clouded with worry. Is she sick? Is she going away? Emma, Jessica isn't who she said she was. Her real name is Amanda, and she's been lying to us. Emma's grip on Buttons tightened. What do you mean? She's not your mama's sister. She's your mama's cousin, and she's been working with some bad people who want to take you away from me. Emma's face crumpled. But she told me stories about Mama. She said Mama loved me. Some of those stories might have been true, sweetheart, but she was using them to trick us. Tears streamed down Emma's face. Why would she do that? I thought she loved me like Mama did. Marcus pulled Emma into his arms, his own heart breaking. Some people don't know how to love the right way, sweetheart. But I want you to know that everything I've told you about how much I love you, everything we've built together, that's all real. Emma sobbed against his chest. I don't want to see her anymore, Daddy. I just want our family to stay the same. It will, baby, I promise. No one is going to take you away from me. Not Amanda, not Richard Blackwood, not anyone. As he held his daughter, Marcus made a decision. He'd been playing defense long enough. It was time to go on the offense and protect his family once and for all. The war for Emma wasn't over, but Marcus Sterling was done being the victim. Tomorrow, he would show Richard Blackwood and Amanda Mitchell what happened when someone threatened his daughter. The gloves were coming off. Marcus Sterling had built his empire by being ruthless when necessary, and now it was time to remind his enemies why crossing him was a mistake. Within 48 hours of discovering Amanda's deception, he launched a counterattack that would end this war once and for all. Jennifer, Marcus said into his phone as he paced his office, I need you to arrange 3 meetings. First, the district attorney. Second, the head of Child Protective Services. Third, every major news outlet in Chicago. While Marcus orchestrated his response, Emma struggled with the betrayal. She'd barely spoken since learning the truth about Aunt Jessica, and Marcus could see the walls going back up around her heart. "Daddy," Emma said quietly over breakfast, "how do we know who's really good and who's just pretending?" The question broke Marcus's heart. At 7 years old, his daughter was learning that adults could lie, manipulate, and hurt the people who trusted them. "Sometimes it's hard to tell, sweetheart," Marcus admitted, "but the people who really love you will prove it with their actions, not just their words." "Like how you came to my birthday even though you were scared?" "Exactly like that. And like how Mrs. Rodriguez took care of you even when she was getting sick. Real love shows up when it's hard." That afternoon, Amanda arrived for her scheduled visit, unaware that her deception had been exposed. Marcus met her at the door with 2 police officers and Robert Chen. "Amanda Mitchell," Officer Torres said. "You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping." Amanda's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Jessica Rose." "We have recordings of your meetings with Richard Blackwood," Robert said, holding up a tablet, "including the one where you discussed how to make Emma accidentally reveal negative things about her father." As they led Amanda away in handcuffs, she turned back to Marcus with venom in her eyes. "You think you've won? Emma will never be truly yours. Sarah's family will always have a claim on her heart. Sarah's real family is the people who love Emma unconditionally," Marcus replied calmly, "and that's exactly what she has." Meanwhile, Richard Blackwood was having his own reckoning. Marcus had uncovered years of financial irregularities in Richard's business dealings, and federal investigators were now examining his books. By evening, Richard was facing charges that could put him in prison for decades. The story broke on the evening news. Billionaire CEO protects daughter from elaborate custody scam. The reporter detailed how Marcus had discovered his daughter by chance, fought off attempts to separate them, and ultimately exposed a conspiracy designed to tear their family apart. Emma watched the news report with wide eyes. "Daddy, are we famous?" "For a little while, sweetheart. But what matters is that the bad people can't hurt us anymore." Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist Marcus had consulted, arrived that evening to help Emma process everything that had happened. "Emma," Dr. Chen said gently, "it's normal to feel confused and sad when someone we trusted lies to us. But this isn't your fault." "I wanted so badly to have someone who knew my mama," Emma admitted. "I thought if I had Aunt Jessica, I'd feel closer to her." But you already are close to your mama," Dr. Chen said. "She's in your smile, your kindness, your love for your family. No one can take that away from you." That night, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, what if there are other people out there who want to take me away?" Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "Emma, I can't promise that life will always be easy, or that bad people won't try to hurt us. But I can promise that I will always fight for you, and I will never stop being your daddy." Emma nodded, then surprised him with her next words. "I'm glad the fake Jessica is gone. She made me feel like I wasn't good enough for our real family." "What do you mean?" "She kept asking if I missed my old life and if I ever wished for a normal family. But this is normal for us, and it's perfect." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. His daughter had seen through Amanda's manipulation better than he'd given her credit for. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Our family is perfect exactly as it is." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Marcus realized something profound. They'd survived every attempt to tear them apart, and each challenge had only made their bond stronger. Emma wasn't just his daughter by blood. She was his daughter by choice, by love, by the daily decision to show up for each other. The war was over, but their story was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, and new opportunities to prove that love really could conquer all. Marcus Sterling had spent 7 years running from fatherhood, but he would spend the rest of his life running toward the greatest adventure he'd ever known, being Emma's dad. Marcus Sterling had built his empire by being ruthless when necessary, and now it was time to remind his enemies why crossing him was a mistake. Within 48 hours of discovering Amanda's deception, he launched a counterattack that would end this war once and for all. "Jennifer," Marcus said into his phone as he paced his office, "I need you to arrange 3 meetings. First, the district attorney. Second, the head of Child Protective Services. Third, every major news outlet in Chicago." While Marcus orchestrated his response, Emma struggled with the betrayal. She'd barely spoken since learning the truth about Aunt Jessica, and Marcus could see the walls going back up around her heart. "Daddy," Emma said quietly over breakfast, "how do we know who's really good and who's just pretending?" The question broke Marcus's heart. At 7 years old, his daughter was learning that adults could lie, manipulate, and hurt the people who trusted them. "Sometimes it's hard to tell, sweetheart," Marcus admitted, "but the people who really love you will prove it with their actions, not just their words." "Like how you came to my birthday even though you were scared?" "Exactly like that. And like how Mrs. Rodriguez took care of you even when she was getting sick. Real love shows up when it's hard." That afternoon, Amanda arrived for her scheduled visit, unaware that her deception had been exposed. Marcus met her at the door with 2 police officers and Robert Chen. "Amanda Mitchell," Officer Torres said, "you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping." Amanda's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Jessica Rose." "We have recordings of your meetings with Richard Blackwood," Robert said, holding up a tablet, "including the one where you discussed how to make Emma accidentally reveal negative things about her father." As they led Amanda away in handcuffs, she turned back to Marcus with venom in her eyes. "You think you've won? Emma will never be truly yours. Sarah's family will always have a claim on her heart. Sarah's real family is the people who love Emma unconditionally," Marcus replied calmly, "and that's exactly what she has." Meanwhile, Richard Blackwood was having his own reckoning. Marcus had uncovered years of financial irregularities in Richard's business dealings, and federal investigators were now examining his books. By evening, Richard was facing charges that could put him in prison for decades. The story broke on the evening news. Billionaire CEO protects daughter from elaborate custody scam. The reporter detailed how Marcus had discovered his daughter by chance, fought off attempts to separate them, and ultimately exposed a conspiracy designed to tear their family apart. Emma watched the news report with wide eyes. "Daddy, are we famous?" "For a little while, sweetheart. But what matters is that the bad people can't hurt us anymore." Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist Marcus had consulted, arrived that evening to help Emma process everything that had happened. "Emma," Dr. Chen said gently, "it's normal to feel confused and sad when someone we trusted lies to us. But this isn't your fault." "I wanted so badly to have someone who knew my mama," Emma admitted. "I thought if I had Aunt Jessica, I'd feel closer to her." "But you already are close to your mama," Dr. Chen said. "She's in your smile, your kindness, your love for your family. No one can take that away from you." That night, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, what if there are other people out there who want to take me away?" Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "Emma, I can't promise that life will always be easy or that bad people won't try to hurt us, but I can promise that I will always fight for you and I will never stop being your daddy." Emma nodded, then surprised him with her next words. "I'm glad the fake Jessica is gone. She made me feel like I wasn't good enough for our real family." "What do you mean?" She kept asking if I missed my old life and if I ever wished for a normal family. But this is normal for us, and it's perfect. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. His daughter had seen through Amanda's manipulation better than he'd given her credit for. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Our family is perfect exactly as it is. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Marcus realized something profound. They'd survived every attempt to tear them apart, and each challenge had only made their bond stronger. Emma wasn't just his daughter by blood, she was his daughter by choice, by love, by the daily decision to show up for each other. The war was over, but their story was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, and new opportunities to prove that love really could conquer all. Marcus Sterling had spent 7 years running from fatherhood, but he would spend the rest of his life running toward the great